study project manager. Again, thank you, Mayor and Council staff, for allowing us the opportunity to come visit with you again. You know, Bob and I was talking earlier, we were here in April, it seems like just a few weeks ago in the spring, so time flies when you're having a fun summer. Here it's fall already, so happy fall, everyone. You have some familiar faces in the audience. Steve Voss, our planning director, Mike Kennedy, our district engineer, Jim Hallgren, assistant district engineer. All three of them were here in April too. So I dragged them over to sit in tonight. And again, we're here to have another rapport with the council, and we've had a lot of conversation with staff in our meetings, in the corridor study, but we're getting to the end of the corridor study. That'd be a good time to come back here and visit with you again. We've got the map here, we've got some additional information to share with you. Bob's going to do a little presentation, and then we'll get to the real working part of our meeting. Hopefully we've got enough time. We said about 40, 45 minutes or so, if that works for you, Mayor and Council members, and then we'll let you get on your business. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, so just want to provide just a little bit of context and background again. Like Tom said, when we were here in April, we had a few more slides. We've cut that back just to, again, refresh what we're doing here. We're really looking at, the highway corridor through the communities of Baxter and Nisswa, so really from the River Bridge all the way up to the County Road 18 intersection up in Nisswa. So that's our study limits. It is a corridor study, so it's a higher level planning study. We're not diving into super design details and all. I mean, that's going to come with other projects as they develop. It's going to come with your interchange project in the future and all too. But we're really looking at the corridor vision. How can we go about making kind of a continuous and comprehensive set of improvements to the overall corridor? So that involves things, spot improvements, involves things of making additions to the local system to support Highway 371. And again, well, I'll get into some of the study goals. So yeah, again, it's multimodal, so we are looking at not only how do we service cars and trucks that use the roadway, but we know that there's other users out here too. Some of them, had a bit of a surprise when we first started, when we were up at Nisswa here, about how, they really allow and encourage golf carts and all. We know that snowmobiles use the corridor in the area, crossover in the winter time. And we also have walkers and bikers that are out in this area. How can they be accommodated within our study area? We know that we don't necessarily want them out on the highway system, but where and how can they move throughout the project area and get to their destinations? So we are looking at kind of the future concepts throughout the entire corridor and developing recommendations. We want to come out of this with kind of a refined set of, not maybe exact types of improvements, but a more refined type of set of concepts of what can be done in these various locations to make those safety and mobility improvements we're looking for. And we're also kind of using our recommendations to inform other things. MnDOT has a pavement project identified coming up in a number of years along the entire stretch. But today we were at a meeting to sit down and coordinate on the interchange project as well. So again, if there are things that we can be looking at that happen along with or advance or after the interchange projects, we want to make sure we're coordinating on all of that. So we really broke our about 18-month study is what we're looking at into 3 different phases. The first phase we kind of completed last year, and that was really the data collection and really identifying what are the issues, what are the problems out there. Over the past number of months, since really we talked to you all in the spring, we've been talking more of the development of the alternatives and evaluating those alternatives. Are they creating solutions for some of the issues we've identified? And now we're moving into kind of that third phase, and it's really the implementation planning, prioritization of when and how some of these improvements should be made. And we hope to kind of wrap up the study. Probably the first quarter of 25 is what we were looking at. We'll see how that goes as we continue to coordinate again with some of those other efforts at the interchange as well. So when we really started in that first phase, there was a number of kind of issues that were identified, but some of the primary ones were safety. We shared some of these statistics with you last time. The number of crashes that are out there, high number of those do occur within kind of the Baxter study area, which makes sense, right? More urbanized corridors, more access happening in that area. But really, there's a number of things going on here with the rear end crashes, but also the ankle crashes that we're really trying to identify how can we make improvements to eliminate some of those more serious crash conditions. Mobility is another one we're looking at. Throughout the corridor, traffic volumes change. not just within the quarter, but also within the day of the week and also the time of year. And I'm sure you're all well aware of that, being from the area of how, on a summer Friday is, substantially different than maybe a February Tuesday along the corridor. So we're taking into account some of those, kind of seasonal changes and fluctuations in traffic. But knowing that, things are likely to continue to increase over time, we are predicting roughly anywhere from 0.5% to 2% growth annually of traffic along the corridor. That higher number is a little bit more in your community. Talking with staff, identifying parts to the southern part of your community that are expecting much more intense land use growth over the next 20 plus years. So in and around that Highland Scenic area, we had a higher growth rate. But we are looking at, again, with the mobility, currently, on an average day, everything does operate generally well. We know that there are certain times and certain maybe legs of intersections that have a little bit more problems than others. But we are also, like I said, looking at those fluctuations in the seasonal peaks where we do start to see much more traffic congestion and things start to break down a little bit more. So again, trying to accommodate that. We don't necessarily build for those, super peak conditions. We don't try to build our roadways to accommodate all of those, because we would be essentially overbuilding for other times of the year and all too. So, and then the last one we just talked about is access management. Again, through Baxter, there's been quite a bit done over the years with frontage roads, backage roads, but in other parts of the corridor, all the way up to Nisswa, we do know that there's still very much a need to further some of those local systems and do a little bit better idea of getting some more access management identified throughout the corridor. So we have done 2 rounds of stakeholder engagement. Again, we probably showed you the bar chart, and again, what we identified as issues being safety, mobility, access, and all. Those were really the top ones that got pulled out in that phase 1 when we were doing engagement with the public and business owners and other stakeholders. So not a big surprise there. In phase 2, we really started to identify what we've got on the map. We shared a number of concept alternatives and just really asked people, is this kind of an acceptable approach if we were to keep this in the toolbox and look at making improvements like this? And generally people don't like change. I was kind of thinking that some of the responses would be more negative than they were. But we did hear, we heard, generally about 60% said that, things were acceptable if they were improving safety. But, there were a number of written comments that came back as well that just, kind of made us, think about, some of those different concepts that we have, could different changes be made. But, and again, like I said, the local supporting roads and expanding that system to improve mobility and really improve safety is very highly supported, by the general consensus of folks that responded. We had, I think in the first round, like you see there, 1,800 online surveys. I think our most recent one, we were just in the 750, 800 kind of range. So again, really good feedback from a number of people when we asked the question about where are you from. I forget how many actually zip codes came up on our response, but it was a very large number. So we're not just getting folks from the area, but we're getting people that are visiting your area, passing through the area, and that was all kind of done through hopefully some of our outreach and social media and all too. So in the south segment, and specifically, that's the Baxter area, we are looking at a few intersections. We have had the challenge in our corridor study with kind of the overlap of what's occurring with the interchange project as well. So really, we were looking at concepts in the Highland Scenic area, Boyer Road, and then kind of the Pine Beach Wise Road kind of area where we had, again, you can see how many kind of different concepts we had for each of those. But we do know that this all needs to work as a system too, and so that's where it does, come into play, where we've got other things going on with the interchange that we're trying to coordinate. Some of the local roads and all that you see there, we're talking as well with Cypress and the frontage roads, Edgewood, Delwood, and some of the others a little bit further to the north of the body and all too. So those images you see there are some of the things we'll show you on the layout in just a minute, but that's really the background we wanted to provide, and really, like I said, we're in that closing out that second phase. We wanted to kind of confirm that we've got a good range of options. If other people had ideas, now's the kind of time to get any final kind of tweaks or items, and then we're going to really be moving into that prioritization and screening process. So that's what we had for presentation. Again, we'd like to just be able to, show and talk about some of the concepts that we have from the Baxter area. So, are there any immediate questions? Otherwise, we can kind of break into the work session part of it too.
Questions, Carlson?
Great. Well, I don't know if you guys want to get up and get around the table, or we can just point it out as we go along here. So again, maybe we'll start on the south end. So at Highland Scenic, I think we had limited types of options there. It's a signalized intersection today. We do have, plenty of capacity at that intersection. So that wasn't necessarily the concern there. It was a long-term kind of, identifying what would be the best solution here if and when, some additional improvements are needed. I think when MnDOT did the 371 corridor through here, the bypass, as we'll call it, they identified a footprint, right, for a long-term, and, we've got an interchange kind of identified in this area. Would it be a diamond interchange? We don't know. That would be something that would come in future project development of what the actual configuration is. But we have the footprint for it. We identified that. We started to then also look at, all right, what other things are needed out here. We started talking about trail connections. We started talking about where could, the access on the east and west side potentially land and be. Obviously, you don't want to be putting access points in kind of that influence area of your lights on your interchange. So we did, start to identify that. The city and the county did the County Road 48 study a year, 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago it's been already. So, we took a lot of that information from that too. But, we're looking at trail connections, we're looking at other frontage road connections. And so that's really, the limited kind of alternatives we had kind of just in the Highland Scenic area. If we had to do some type of real interim condition, it was talked about in a couple of our kind of technical advisory committee meetings. Could you do something out there of limiting turning movements and all? It didn't seem like it was a great solution, but if we did have really a crash or a safety condition pop up over the course of time. Interchanges take a long time to develop. I mean, what you guys been talking about this one for decades, right? This would be something that again probably can't just happen over the course of a couple of years. So could there be an interim condition? Possibly, but that would be happening. Kind of probably need additional study at that time. So we really didn't do anything other than those kind of keeping the interchange once. So
I think when we were here this spring, we kind of talked about it, we want to be expressway. I think the dial is leaning more towards the expressway as the kind of desired outcome of the vision for 371, at least through Baxter. Partly because of what we've learned now as we got through the interchange process, but also, again, your growth, and again, with input from staff, is that you're ready to start growing this southern part of your community. And, you've already got a vision for, along with the county, for access management here to accommodate that increase in traffic. So, again, Bob mentioned in his presentation, 0.5% of the 2%. Well, this is the 2% annual growth area. That's high. We rarely ever see 2%. You're going to generally have 0.5%, maybe 1%. So that's high, and that over 20
it's
years
sustaining
period
that
of time.
over 20 years. That becomes a much bigger number
big
for
number.
traffic volume. Yes, yep.
So this is something, again, you have this vision that's in your plan when we finish this, that when you just determine maybe the traffic counts and other things, and you want to start moving towards the direction of constructability of this, you'll have those measures for when you want to start working on it. So it might be something in the next handful of years, you maybe start pursuing some funding to start an engineering work, and then, future funding for that. But again, as your development continues to occur, you'll know.
Yeah, we did a little sensitivity analysis about, generally how long would it take for it to be warranted. And it's a number of years out, right? I don't remember the exact year that we came up with, but it's a number of years out. But, as I mentioned, to ultimately get to the construction point, it takes a long time. And so there again, it could be something that over the course of a handful of years, 5 to 10 years, really start identifying, all right, yeah, maybe we need to advance design, maybe we need to start looking at how do we, pay for those types of improvements, what funding sources it's on everyone's radar, just again, because it does take a long time, to get that.
I think if that 2% held, Bob, it was 13 to 18 years out.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, it was before the full 20, but it wasn't.
So like Tim Bray was saying, the Crow Wing County engineer and I, that what we need to do is watch over the next few years, does the 2% actually come true? And then we should be looking at that interchange, you know, in that 13 to 18 years, which it takes 10 years to develop a project like that. So that ain't that far out to start developing it if it holds true.
You're right. Do we want to talk about anything in the interchange area, or do you want to just, I mean,
Well, since we're here,
yeah,
again, we've been coordinating our two planning efforts together. Of course, the interchange influence area has been designated from Glory Road up to, kind of that design, universal almost to Clearwater, although we're finding that the influence does extend probably a little further all the way up to Boyd, again, depending on what happens on Furniture Road, Baxter Road systems. But we do know for sure that the desire is to grade separate 210 and 371, and that's the money that was given to us to do this work. That's the premise for it, is to separate from the railroad track. So you've got certain parameters that's involved. Again, I'm speaking from a planning standpoint. Our engineers can certainly chime in from an engineering standpoint. But again, you've got a certain height of the bridge, which means you've got certain grades you need to meet depending on the design. So that determines where that highway touches down as it comes over the top of the bridge. So questions that we're working on are, can Excelsior remain open and accessible to 371? Probably determining that it's unlikely that will happen. So the question then becomes, what do you do with it? Can you still allow vehicular travel back and forth to Excelsior? And I think we're coming to that conclusion of probably depending on what scenario ends up bubbling to the top as far as preferred alternative, because we don't have that design alternative yet. But again, the desire would be to allow access across Excelsior. And then those other things come into play. Trevor, chime in as you want, but I know that the roundabout here, there's certain interest to have a connection made on that fourth leg, perhaps as part of that. How does Edgewood operate as a frontage road? Same thing on the other side. How are those frontage roads are going to operate? What's going to happen to design? Would we change the function of that in the future, again, depending on where the touchdown point is? Can we continue to have that access here that it's today? It's the three corners. And what happens further down here, again, in Clearwater? So we're working through those questions and those solutions, and I would say probably in the next 2 or 3 months, you're going to have a few more answers to those questions. And we've suggested to the interchange team that perhaps they have a similar workshop with you sometime, maybe this later this winter or spring, to come and sit down and get their detailed stuff out and kind of inform you to what we do.
yeah, I mean, they're doing traffic work, we're doing some as well, I'll jump in just real bit. So we're not only looking here, we're also looking here too, right? Because we need to know, again, how things will move throughout your entire community and through this area. And so we're doing a little bit of extra traffic analysis again on how can, if things did change with some of these access points, what does that mean for golf course? What does that mean for, even as far back as Inglewood? I mean, just how are people gonna be able to get around, and what would it look like with developments occurring and all that of, where does that traffic shift to if it changes? And so we're trying to run different scenarios to kind of help answer some of those questions. It's a tough one. I mean, it's just a really difficult area. So, I mean, like I said, there's, that other team will likely be coming and they'll have their, series of options that they're looking at and screening those and evaluate them against various criteria. We're trying to see how does that play into the, again, the whole corridor kind of vision as well. So,
And excuse me, College of Glory area too is part of our influence area for the interchange. And then what happens on your corners here for development? You got some other development things coming in here. And having access here right now is expressway, do we wanna continue to have signals in here? Do we wanna have more free-flowing traffic on 371 and then have that traffic move on and off 371 at a different configuration? Or a different location that can still have access here too?
So you may want it to be an expressway. We want traffic to move without a doubt, but we also want people to be able to get on and off. And, I mean, we can put a bridge across the whole thing and you guys can get to walk very quicker.
Well, it's
But
probably
that's
not,
not what, that's
Yeah.
not what's gonna happen.
probably not what's gonna happen, correct?
I was just a curiosity question along that same line. You said you had responses from all different systems or whatever. I'm just kind of curious to know if there was a way to differentiate where those comments came from. 'Cause it would seem to me, and this might be wrong, to be the two different attitudes there. There's the people on the way to Walker that don't care, they want to get through here versus us that are stuck here, for all the way too. I don't know if there's a way to discern who was saying what. Do you follow my question at all?
I do, I think I do, yeah, and it's difficult, I mean, with the technology we have on how the comments are submitted through the survey and all that, it's really hard to say if someone responded like, hey, my top is local access, to know what their zip code was,
Yeah.
Baxter zip code, or my priority was like, safety and the quickest way through the corridor. You could probably guess that's not a zip code, but no, we don't have the ability to go and have those unless we had, it would have made the survey much more complicated.
I think one of the, and we've been kind of challenged with your thought process, Mayor, is, how do we see, we have to look at it as a system. It's got to function as a system as well as your own street system too, because we'd like to see, those local trips, be able to use your local system to get where they need to go. And that's just as important part of this as the highway itself. Inspections. And we've been talking about, we visited with them in the spring, we talked about extending Cypress, how that works, and how that's staged. We know, again, you've got a plan to extend it to the north. What are those staged pieces, when's the appropriate time to connect it to whatever? And then those steps are working or not.
And even as early as today, Tom, not to interrupt you, but for the council, just today's meeting with the TAC for the interchange, talked about extending Cypress up to Whispering Woods Lane in order to take that Menards traffic that's coming from Brainerd area off of 371 and coming back way to Menards. So that's even being discussed, of how you change some of the traffic flow at Whiter Road in those frontage roads. And that's with talking about the interchange. So that's how far MnDOT's going is they're going quite further than what they need to on the interchange. But with the other study going that Tom's here for tonight, I think the two need to flow together.
I just can't prove it, but I think there's a difference in mentality. Friday night people, they could not care less what's going on here. They want to get to the average Sunday, they want to get home. And so I don't know if, I don't know how you work with that, but I think that that's going to be a challenge.
Well, I don't know if others want to speak to it, but, MnDOT's philosophy is we're not building a highway for the penultimate traffic. We're building it for, just as an example, we just finished a study more on Highway 65.
Yeah.
We're designing it for the 30th highest hour, not for the very highest hour. Something that's more moderate, because we can't build out all that congestion. That's just not practical. So we're building it for more of an average, knowing you're bringing up the speed. And during those peaks, it's one of those people who are largely you guys did origin destination, are probably coming through instead of stopping.
Should we touch on White? I don't want to have us run out of time and not get to some of this other stuff. So at White, we did, recognize this. This was when we did some of our analysis, along the corridor, one of our higher crash locations. So it does have we call it the critical crash rate above 1, which really is a statistical significance that there's, really something going on here that should be corrected. So, we really identified this as a safety problem as well as the congestion and the mobility that's going on there too. So we had 4 kind of concepts that got developed. That's what you'll see in these boxes. I don't know if anyone took the survey, but some of these were actually identified in the survey then too, of what could be done. And there's some pieces to these that can be intermixed and all. But we had, everything from another grade separation, right? And actually this scored quite high in our survey response. The challenge was when we actually put the question in there, we just showed like, hey, put a grade separation, but there's a whole lot more that goes with that, right? I mean, we didn't disclose like, hey, this is the amount of impacts that would be involved, this is the amount of cost that would be involved. It was just like, hey, people thought like, that would solve all the problems, let's do that. Or we know that that's not necessarily, reality, because we'd have frontage roads that would need to get realigned. We'd have a number of impacts to existing properties out there. Another option that we had is just expanding the capacity of the intersection, so adding additional left and right turn lanes to the area to get traffic through there in the same manner it is today, but with more lanes, with more capacity, potentially hoping that you can maintain the green time on the main line so that you can keep traffic moving there, but then also with the added capacity on the side streets, you can get people to clear through Whitehall on the east and west approach. Another one we had is there's some other locations out along the corridor where we've got 3/4 access today. We would kind of design something like that. We would also add kind of the median U-turns and kind of signalize them all. It would function as like a single signal, but really would provide movements of everything where you just can't do the left turns or the through movements on Whitehall. If you were to do that, you'd have to, like many of you probably been up in the BIR area where you have to turn right, go north, turn around to go south at a median U-turn. So that was another option. And then the last one is a slightly different design. Not a lot of these in Minnesota, but it's called a Michigan U-turn, where you do allow the throughs on the side street, but you restrict the left turns. And again, you want them to use the median U-turns to do their movement. So that's a little bit different concept here for Minnesota. To my knowledge, I don't think there's any in Minnesota that we're aware of. But that's just another option. Similar kind of operations as this, because you can take your left off of main line, either southbound or northbound, but you just really restrict the left turns from the side streets to, again, increase capacity and get a better signal phasing going on with the intersection. So again, while we're showing 3 signals, they really operate as a single signal in how they're timed. So
One of the constants, and something that's of interest certainly to you guys, is one of the constants in all of these is where we put the frontage roads. Because we all know the frontage road intersections is just too close to intersection to continue to operate. So can we, on this side, can we have an alternate connection between the frontage road going and Gulf Drive? And then close this connection at Mills, Mills Corner. So, again, we can eliminate one of the legs here, which contributes to that congestion. Same thing on the other side. Are we able to have a connection, between Furniture Road and one of the other backage roads to then be able to, kind of take some of that congestion away here? To do it on the other side, you probably have to have some other kind of solution. And that's where we're talking about this connection behind Menards, perhaps that allows traffic to come around, so that maybe we restrict just a right in, right out only, on this leg, hill. So, those are strategies that we'll certainly try to move forward through our planning process, because, again, thinking of it as working as a system, that could certainly help. And maybe those strategies are something to employ, leaving the intersection the way it operates today as an option too, without having to reconstruct it.
And we've had discussions about timing, right? And, should it happen before the interchange, right? Should it happen? I don't know that there's a perfect solution or an easy answer on that. Part of me says, maybe wait and see what happens. And then you got to have a plan ready so that if there is something that really needs to be addressed, you can jump on it pretty quick, right? The last thing we want to do is go and make a major investment, and, Trevor, you were pointing at the meeting today, and then the public see that, oh my gosh, we got a problem somewhere else. Why did you guys do that without thinking, through and so we would want to have this stuff ready to go. And again, that's part of this planning study. And a necessarily, midnight would be looking at just this, really. And so the fact that we get the ability to look north and south, a greater distance, I did that wrong, south and north, I think that's a really good aspect of things, so that when the public does come, like, hey, what are you doing if, we can say, well, here's our list of improvements, and, it's less about the exact year it gets built, but hey, when certain triggers may be hit, that's when we start to look at implementing those things, and whether that's a crash rate or a delay type of capacity issue, have those ready.
One of the things that we've been discussing too is, again, we're just at a point in time, but your community's continuing to grow. You've got developments that are coming in. We're aware of several, some that we think are gonna be more high-intensity traffic generators. Kind of question Trevor's posing to us is, how do we account for that additional traffic moving in and out of the system? We don't even know what the system's gonna operate. So that's really challenging us all. How do we do that? Because we don't want to turn away development because of those unknowns. We want that development to be able to continue to, again, we want that tax base, we want that increase of business to happen here. So there's a balance. We're trying to, again, create that vision so that you can at least work with those developers to try to, again, if you've got an empty building, you want to fill that building, you don't want to sit there. You've got empty property, and I know we've been working with, the Tanner property over here, and that's, there's been some challenges there, and, what's the right solution for that so that can be developed? That's, we're trying to move that through the process. And there's others, there's certainly others, you've got stuff down in college, in Laurier too, and you're gonna continue down in Highland Scenic, have the same thing as you've got development.
Maybe the last two we'll touch on real quick, and we'd love to have some of this discussion. We did look at just some real minor improvements, like what's going on in the body. Currently, the way the left turn lanes line up, if a southbound vehicle is looking to make a left turn onto Vatney, in an eastbound direction, and someone's in the left turn lane northbound, a lot of times they kind of, they face off against each other, right? It's hard to see. So we were looking at just maybe offset left turn lanes. We had kind of a similar situation, I have the drawing, but up at Pine Beach and Wise as well as, could you offset those left turn lanes a little bit? That'd be really if over time there's a safety problem that develops, what could you do? And that's just something pretty simple, not real impactful, that just would, again, improve sight lines and hopefully improve the safety condition if it becomes a bigger issue. So again, setting up things, what's in the toolbox that could be done, and identifying.
Well, the test on this one's gonna be with Richard Wilkins. So.
You're absolutely right.
You're gonna have to follow.
When more trips happen there.
So that we may end up having to do something of that sort. Questions? Comments? Questions? Round robin, perhaps? Mike, Jim, Steve? Jim, Steve, anything from the district point of view? Mike's always got something.
I don't know if I have anything, but, and you heard the word not only safety for the vehicles, but it's been mentioned, it's peds, bikes, all the other modes. You want all the, you need the truck traffic going up there, you need access to the areas of the trucks, so it's kind of a balancing of all of those different modes of operations that are going on, so.
Yeah, I think maybe the other thing I'll just add is, I mean, you heard us say a lot of times tonight about project team as well, right? And that team involves all the stakeholders that are involved, and that doesn't, you know, just come in and just do what MinDOT needs to do. I mean, we understand that it's a system, and that, you know, the county roads, the city streets, the state highways, they all need to work together. And again, just hopefully, you know, we've tried to engage the best we can with your staff and with the public and with the businesses. You know, we can't possibly hit every single person out here that's, you know, uses this corridor and everything, but hopefully we're getting good representation and hearing, you know, the feedback we need to hear to help make some of these decisions. You know, again, these projects develop over time, but they need to ultimately develop over the course of a bunch of jurisdictions, all kind of buying in, like, yep, this is what we need to do, because what we do here might affect your city street, might, and that's something that, you alluded to today. The MinDOT does something that might ultimately cause the county to have to make an investment on something. They gotta be able to plan for that and be ready for it too, or with the city as well. So, that's why we try to get out in front of you guys and you know, talk about these studies early and hopefully often enough that, you know, you're informed and understanding that when something comes up, it's like, oh boy, we didn't expect this was coming, even though some of these are, again, maybe years out, but,
I think we said it pretty well at the meeting too. There's gonna be tails to this project.
absolutely, yeah.
That are gonna be financially difficult into the future. There's just no way around it, there's too much. So there's gonna be a cause and effect somewhere in here that probably wasn't anticipated, because you can't change how people drive a lot of times.
So what would trigger the change at this point? I'm specifically Novotny. You talked about safety's been mentioned a couple times in the last few minutes. Novotny is probably our most vulnerable. You talk about that offset. If we could gain that, that's where we're seeing the crashes with injuries. I don't know what the numbers are specifically, but that's the one. It's what you said 5 minutes ago was the easier fixes of all of them. What would trigger that at this point? Because if Quick Trip comes or something, we just put up an apartment building there, the turns are gonna be greater. It's not so much at Lake Forest, I don't know why, I think it's probably volume, but Novotny is probably the worst one, so what would trigger that at this
Well,
point?
I was gonna kind of defer to Jim as kind of, you know, working with our traffic staff and see. Yeah.
Just the way I would approach it, we would look at developing these fixes under a pavement project. So the next resurfacing project that we would look through would be an opportunity for us to pursue something like that. Our other opportunity would be through the HSIP program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is a federally funded program, where we'd have to demonstrate severe crashes, a safety problem with severe crashes. I'm not quite sure what type of crashes are occurring there, but that would be our other opportunity. The third opportunity that we're currently kicking around is through the IIJA program, the federal program, where we're looking at piggybacking onto this study and looking at applying for some federal grants through the RAISE program, where we would do look at access management and J-turns. You know, these improvements here at Novotny could be included as well. So those would be the three opportunities that we would be looking at to do something here at Novotny.
Because that's, I think, Clearwater and at design out front of Taco Bell, when you offset those, the crash reduction was huge. So you said it's fairly easy. I understand nothing is easy, but fairly easy. And then the safety, that's going to be the volume pickup at that intersection will be the greatest in the shortest amount of time. So
When is the mill and overlay schedule from Baxter to Nisswa?
I don't think
30, 31?
31.
it is still several years out, in that 2030 to 32 kind of time frame, depending on if we're lucky enough to get a federal grant, we can make some adjustments there, so we have a economy of scale, let's call it, where we would do the safety improvements, along the corridor as well as the Pono. So there's opportunities for advancement, depending on whether or not we're allowed to apply for the grant and whether or not we receive the grant.
7 to 8 years out is quite a bit.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Anything else? Mayor?
Everybody's speechless.
We left you speechless. Well, I'm sure you got something to say. You know how to reach us. Trevor knows how to reach us. If you got anything, feel free to Brad or Trevor. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
You know, the bottom line here is, we have 9,000 people, whatever, this is a huge project. These dollars, to your point, they're staggering, you know, how do we do these, how do we put this kind of a thing together without help, you know, that keeps me awake. Thanks for the input so far.
Yep. You're welcome. And anytime you need us to come back, be sure to invite us. We'll happy for having you back anytime.
Would you be willing to conclude with kind of a tentative timeline as you're looking at wrapping up? I know that there was there in context, because as you finish up the study, I know that you come back for municipal approval or consent. Kind of that timeline, what you're thinking, so that the council's aware of.
Yeah, so-
A, this isn't the last time we'll be discussing it, but B, that the point
Right,
at which.
and I think there's gonna be two different things going on,
Yeah.
right? There's what's going on with the interchange and what's going on with the study. The study portion, you know, our schedule right now is looking at, you know, we are, you know, kind of in that third phase, and we're hoping in the kind of first quarter of 2025 was the plan. You know, we're just talking, you know, does that seem still make the most sense and reasonable? That's where we're at right now. We would have our study report then, that would be made available to staff and others, and we could do a presentation to the council at that time. With a study, there's not quote unquote municipal consent with a study, but we definitely would want to get, you know, city's input on some of those recommendations and all of that. I mean, when you're talking the interchange, it changes to the system from an actual construction project, then you have that more formalized kind of process that goes on.
And I would suspect that by probably spring, you're gonna be working on a preferred alternative design. And then
It's tentatively scheduled for June for municipal consent, is what is in the schedule for the interchange.
Yeah, because that's on a relatively fast track to.
So Bob, I have a question real quick. So we have a palette of options here for like Boyda.
Yep.
Is the intent to kind of leave these all in the plan as future considerations, or to pick one or two, or is it okay
Well-
to leave them all there and we know that we got a future problem, we can pick and choose?
Yeah,
or-
well, I think it's a good question. I think that's some of the feedback we've been asking staff on our evaluation matrix. Are some of these, you know, less desirable than others? I think all of these options we show, you know, can work from a safety and mobility standpoint. There's pros and cons to them. But, you know, if we were to keep in, say, the diamond interchange, you know, does that really mean that we're really serious about, because again, relocating the frontage roads and, you know, the investment that would take, I mean, that's a big project too, right? I mean, in the upwards of this. So, I mean, does it make sense to screen some? I guess that's what we're in the process right now of trying to see. I mean, do I think all four of them could move forward? They could, but I do think there's like, well, there's this and that, which are very similar, so if we kept one, it's not like we couldn't pivot to the other as well, so.
Well, it's nice to have a.
Yeah.
Well, almost, you got that ease of implementation, some of those lower cost ones are probably easier to draw from, but then, you know, it's nice to also have more probably visionary ones too, you know, in your back pocket, just in case.
council meeting following that presentation, there was an inquiry as to the compliance or with the spirit and intent of the state statute as it pertains to lodging tax. We did obtain a legal opinion from our city attorney on the matter, which is attached to the RCA. Time has been set aside tonight to have discussion, and ultimately we're seeking direction from the council on how we'd like to move forward on the matter. In the context of the attorney, obviously is to discretion of the council on what to, lodging tax has to be utilized for the purposes outlined by state statute, but the entity or the vehicle which is done is left to the discretion of the local unit of government. Since the mid-90s, it's been Visit Brainerd, or the entity that's now Visit Brainerd. And in that context, in 2006, I believe it was, when the joint powers agreement between the cities of Baxter and Brainerd was terminated, the city of Baxter did not follow that up with adopting a resolution identifying Visit Brainerd, or the entity at the time that is now Visit Brainerd. And as such, Mrs. Berkness has identified or provided a resolution kind of outlining the basic parameters to use as a template should the council want to move in that direction. So again, time set aside this evening to have discussion and be looking for directive from the council on how you would like staff to move forward regarding the matter.
Okay, so what are we saying? The first thing we need to do is decide if we have a legal document and work on that, or?
Well, the legal document doesn't. The resolution calling for the entity, the bureau per se, has not been in place since 2006. So what Mrs. Berkness is saying is in the eyes of the law, in order to be meeting the spirit and intent, that a resolution needs to be in place. She had drafted a resolution that identifies Visit Brainerd as being that. What she is indicating is the council wants to continue with that relationship, or in that context, or that adopting a resolution of similar nature should identify any levels of expectation that the council would be looking to place on the entity in doing the work on behalf of the city.
Okay. Thoughts?
I guess I can speak first. I don't know if you were going to, but so I know I was kind of the impetus of this conversation, and I think my opinion was made known in the Brainerd Dispatch this week that I think it's prudent for the city to have a marketing director that's a city employee, and then similar to how I think it was the Brainerd EDA, and I don't know the exact numbers, but several years ago they decided, and I think Visit Brainerd was part of that, they decided to, instead of give all of their funds to one entity, they opened it up to somewhat of a competitive nature for different organizations to come in and lobby or ask for those funds to be used. So, and I'm one vote, and this might die on the vine, I get that, but I think something similar should happen with the lodging tax that the city of Baxter collects, in that we have a marketing director in-house that then decides how that money should be spent. And if it means contracting with agencies like Visit Brainerd, that's great. But from my perspective, that's what should happen. And part of it is, I do feel, I'm not trying to rebrand the area into Visit Baxter. That's not my intent. I understand the value of marketing the area, but that is a lot of Baxter tax dollars that could be used to directly benefit the city of Baxter. And I think a marketing director working with small businesses, hey, there's a lot of options out there, I think. That's how I think it should be. That's how I think it should be done. I believe it should be a city employee that has maybe a working group of businesses that are, and residents that are part of Baxter to decide on an annual basis how that money is spent. And I know these people are good people. I never once have implied that money has been misspent or any malfeasance of any kind, and I know these are good people, but that's a lot of tax dollars for the owner. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the owner of BIR is on the board. No, that's on the webpage. Is that outdated?
I've never been on the board.
On your board of directors? BIR, Cart Country.
Julie.
Yeah, and I think a vice president at a bank. Now, I'm sure these are all great people, but I want a closer tie. This is just my opinion. I want a closer tie to what benefits the city of Baxter. And what benefits the city of Baxter might be, in part, Visit Brainerd. And I'm not, it's not a, I'm trying, with our budget, I'm gonna wrap up here. With our budget, we get very little government aid to help our city when it comes to public works and the police department. I mean, we watch every penny. We have to, because we don't get a lot of help from the outside. And we do that, and with all across our budget, and my opinion is we should do that with the lodging tax as well. I understand they're two different pots of money. Can't be just thrown into the general levy to be used for whatever it is. I've never said that. But I do believe we should treat the lodging tax just like we do any of our other taxes. And look after it as closely as we do with those. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say.
Go ahead.
I just have a couple of comments that kind of probably tie in along those similar lines. Is that obviously we've had a long stretch of nobody having a reason to notice either way, so things must have been going fine. But when I read things like the attorney suggested resolution, at this point, I personally can't be part of a quote-unquote unanimous approval of a long-term marketing plan. I don't believe that I feel that I've ever seen a meaningful marketing plan that would tie directly to what she noted in the memo. Is each and every expenditure is therefore evaluated on the basis of whether it would market or promote the city as a tourist or convention center. So part of my concern probably ties into Mr. Phillips's concern, is that, you know, by having people visit Cart Country or by having people visit one of the resorts north of town, that indirectly benefits the city. And I don't see the direct, like, as Mr. Phillips said, like, we're not looking to rebrand this to be the Baxter Lakes area, but at the same time, as elected officials for this city, we are one of a few groups of people who have an absolute obligation to Baxter and not the spillover of the rest of the county, and then hoping that our tax dollars flow back from other areas. So those are my big picture concerns. A plan that has distinct ties to that each and every expenditure language, a tie in a plan directly to how are we getting people to stay within the city limits or to go to the businesses in Baxter specifically would be what I'd be looking for.
Okay, thank you.
I have to agree, I agree with the attorney's memo, and I think we need to put together a resolution that creates a board within the city that handles this. And I think Jeff is correct, it's not just a single prong approach that we need to do, it needs to be multiple entities, just not one focus, if you will. I think the focus should be within the confines of the city and how working outside of the city actually affects what happens in the city.
Okay. Just a couple of comments, and that's all they are. Is that I am not in favor of another employee. We have spots right now that we haven't been able to fill because we can't afford them. The other comment I would make is that we've never had representation on them, or we've never gone to a meeting. I don't know how we know what they're doing, if they're doing what we want them to do or not. We've never, I don't know if anybody who's ever been there either. And so I just, we want to make sure that we're making the right move without more investigation into what's happening right now. So we have a consensus here. It sounds like you guys want to move a different direction. So how far are we doing, Brad?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to provide some clarifications in that context. The attorney's memo doesn't identify that the city would be establishing a board or anything like that. It's in the resolution, it's referencing expectations of Visit Brainerd. So I just want to make that clear in that context. And two, and I just want to follow with Zach, as you indicated, obviously since 96, 97, whenever the Joint Powers Agreement was established, there hasn't been a level of expectations. It's been there, and ideologies change from time to time. In that context, and if the city wants marketing to be done in a different direction, I think in the context of portraying that and allowing an organization like Visit Brainerd to be able to take those levels of expectations and lay out the business plan or the marketing plan in which the council is laying out as expectations. There hasn't been a level of expectations since the inception. It'd be the same process that we would go through if we were to look internally in that context. There's a structure that's in place. In my opinion, the context is the existing structure able to achieve that level of expectations. We've never asked Visit Brainerd or another entity for that matter to go in that direction. And I think that should be discussed at this table too, before making a decision of going one direction or another.
I can follow on that. In that, a good portion of the comment that I made in talking about a plan that ties directly to these expenditures, I'm currently agnostic on who creates the plan, but I could not vote in favor of the resolution as stated, not having seen a plan. So that's mainly where I'm going. I think there may be more conversation that needs to happen in terms of that big picture. So I'll leave it at that for now.
With a follow-up with that, the resolution or packet done by the attorney was to establish status quo.
In essence, yes, but in building into that, the thing that kind of hung me up is that the resolution expects for a long-term marketing plan, and then within the memo, I'm tying together the idea that really our obligation is the city. One of the things in the text there that kind of caught me off guard was understand better the dynamic there too, in terms of like, the tax dollars that we're responsible for seem to be quite separate from what that council might be responsible for. To tying to the original reason for the conversation, trying to be responsible with the tax dollars that we specifically owe to the residents of Baxter and the businesses of Baxter. I may have taken that off on a tangent, but yeah, I guess my thought is that the plan would have to be quite specific and clear before I feel good about voting to even establish status quo based on the wording that I see in front of me right now.
Okay. What do you need, Brad?
Well, I'm looking for, obviously, there's thoughts and ideas in regards to a marketing, and in that context, I don't know if that's been laid out by the council. The only thing that I've heard to this point is hiring somebody to figure it out. And is that the direction?
I think that's only my direction. I don't know if, I know the mayor's opposed to it. It's not, it is funded by the lodging. That position is, it doesn't come out of the budget, it's funded by the lodging tax. But I think I might be on an island with that, hiring a marketing director in-house, but I think that,
So,
hold on just a second. But I know, I think, well, one of the cities was referenced in the amicus brief in the dispatch, but I think there's two cities down in the Twin Cities area that have brought it back in-house or established it in-house. And I just feel that's a better way, it's just my opinion, that's a better way to manage just shy of $500,000 of public tax dollars, is to have a city employee in charge of that program, answering to Brad or the community development.
because as I say that, those communities that you referenced, went and got special legislation at the state legislature in order to achieve that. So if we're looking that long picture, there are some steps that we would have to go through and get legislative approval.
Sir, I don't believe they had to get legislative approval to bring it in-house. The statute establishes it in-house and authorizes a city to contract with a nonprofit to do it on their behalf. But you don't have to get state approval to do your marketing in-house.
No, not the marketing in-house, but what they're utilizing the funds for. And I think you're referring to
No.
Woodbury and Plymouth.
Well, no, I'm not talking about, the use of funds would be similar, maybe with some difference than what's currently happening with Visit Brainerd. I'm not talking about any other alternative uses of the funds. What I'm saying is those funds should flow through a marketing director that's a city employee. That's right. I'm not talking about other possible uses of those funds. I'm only speaking still specifically to, well, marketing and advertising does have a broad definition, but similar to how it's being spent now, with some difference, but nothing that requires legislative authority.
No, I understand.
Okay.
In that context of things, you were referencing those two, or
Just that they were identified as establishing their marketing in-house. They felt that was the better way, and I think they referenced it's public tax dollars. You know, you have a city employee that has a committee or working group in a public meeting deciding on an annual basis how that money is spent. That's my. But that's just, like I said, I think I'm on an island.
No, I don't think so. I agree with that approach.
There's a valid oversight aspect to that. That's a direct, simple way to make sure that the dollars are being spent as asked. I'm still open to whatever might be. I would be open to either pathway of asking for a specific plan from Visit Brainerd if that's status quo is where we want to stay. I'm not opposed to that. I think there's tightening that needs to happen since it's gone this long without the annual plan, the annual budget, the things that are listed in here, where not putting you on an island as much as saying I'm open to either pathway, just with more accountability built into our system.
Okay. Let's leave the dogs lie, I guess, or.
Well, no, I can't let sleeping dogs lie, but I'm taking your feedback and I will work with our legal counsel. I will work with Visit Brainerd in that context. I think that there's an opening here to kind of establish, as you said, more accountability for that, what that looks like in that context, how an advisory board or board, that creates that check and balance. We'll work with both the attorney and others and try and bring something back for the council's consideration in the future.
Okay. I should just let it rest. And I don't want to dumb this down, but, it's kind of like disciplining your kids when you never told them what the rules were in the first place, I don't know that we've laid out what our expectations are. I know we've never been to a meeting, we don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you. And so I don't know if the funds aren't being misdirected. I don't have enough knowledge to make those kinds of assumptions and changes there, so I'm just gonna say that, then leave it alone, and we'll see what comes back.
That implies that I'm implying there's mismanagement of
I'm
funds.
not applying anything, I'm giving my comment like you did.
Okay, well, you said it was punitive and then.
What I'm saying is we've never attended the meeting, so we don't know. That's what I'm saying. We have no idea. We have no idea what they're spending it on or what they're doing, so.
And have they ever come to us with a budget for review?
And have we asked, I can't believe we don't have a record of an agreement from '06. That's kind of
What was the agreement prior to 2006?
What's that?
What was the agreement prior to 2006?
Yeah, that one's signed, we got that one.
Yeah, 2006 was a joint powers agreement between Brainerd and Baxter that identified Visit Brainerd. I've got copies of it.